Hello everyone, my name is Victoria Canby and welcome to my exhibit on the 79th Ohio Volunteer Infantry. I'm sure all of us learned about the Civil War in school, and many of us continue to enjoy watching documentaries and visiting the battlefields in our spare time. This exhibit, however, goes beyond the statistics and helps us learn about the men themselves and how the war may have impacted their lives. The 79th OVI was formed on August of 1862 at Camp Dennison. Camp Dennison was an Army fort just north of Cincinnati, located in between the towns of Milford and Miamisville. Following the Civil War, the camp was closed. You can see here in Figure 1 an artist's rendition of what the camp most likely looked like during the Civil War. The majority of the men who joined the 79th OVI were from the surrounding counties of Clinton and Warren. After being formed in August, the men got orders to march south. The first few weeks were simply traveling from one occupied town to the next. It wasn't until the winter of 1862-63 that they were given orders to follow after the Confederate General John Hunt Morgan. Morgan had been leading several raids around the Cumberland area. Today it's known as Morgan's Raid. Finally occupying Nashville on August 19th, the 79th OVI settled down for the long winter of 1863-64. In February, the regiment was ordered to join into Sherman's Atlanta campaign. The Atlanta campaign was where the 79th OVI saw the most of its fighting. To the right, you can see just a few of the battles and skirmishes they participated in. Their most intense battle was that of the Siege of Atlanta. This battle lasted over a month. During this time, many small skirmishes happened in the surrounding area of Atlanta, and the 79th OVI was involved in one such skirmish at the Chattahoochee River Bridge. The Union Army finally entered Atlanta on September 3rd, surrounded by burned-out buildings. Following the capture of Atlanta, the 79th OVI joined Sherman's army during the infamous March to the Sea. Making its way to Savannah, the army was told to burn houses and steal food. This fear tactic was used in hopes of demoralizing the people of Georgia, and that's exactly what it did. Following this campaign, the southern states involved in the conflict were severely weakened. Early in the days of 1865, the 79th OVI was again on the move, heading north up the coast, joining the Carolina campaign. The regiment was again involved in bloody battles, culminating in the Battle of Bennett's Farm. Following this battle, the Confederate General Joseph E. Johnston surrendered to the Union Army on April 26, 1865. This was the end of fighting for the troops of the 79th. The regiment entered Washington, D.C. and joined in on the Grand Review of Troops on May 24th. A few weeks later, on June 9th, the regiment was mustered out and sent home. Now we will get to know the men of the 79th OVI a little better. You may be asking yourself, who were these men? Our first soldier is Lieutenant Colonel Azariah Doane. Doane was born on December 17, 1824 in Wilmington, Ohio, where he remained a resident the rest of his life. Before the war, Doane started out as a lowly law clerk before becoming the county's prosecuting attorney. Doane was a faithful Quaker his entire life, and through his meetings records, we find that Doane married his first wife, Amanda Stratton, in Highland County, Ohio, on October 29, 1847. Following the death of Amanda in 1845, Doane went on to marry his second wife, Martha Hale, in Wilmington, Ohio, on June 5, 1856. According to his obituary, Doane was one of the first residents of Wilmington to join the Army. He began his Army career as a first lieutenant in the 12th Regiment before being promoted over the 79th. He remained with the 79th the rest of the war and was mustered out in Washington, D.C. along with the rest of his men. Following the war, Doane served in the Ohio State Senate before coming home to serve as the Common Pleas Judge for Clinton County until 1890. In retirement, he was an active church member and died in his daughter's home on August 22, 1911. Gilbert Van Zant, or more famously known as Little Gib, was born on December 20, 1851 on his parents' farm outside of Port William, Ohio. Van Zant grew up on this farm and joined the Union Army along with his father. Van Zant was first used as the regiment drummer and then went to act as courier. When he was mustered out of the Army in 1865, Van Zant was just 13 years old. President Andrew Johnson offered the boy a place at West Point, but Van Zant declined. Reaching adulthood, Van Zant never spent much time living or working anywhere for very long. It wasn't until he and his mother moved to Kansas City, Missouri, that Van Zant really settled down. He never married, and his death certificate states that he died on October 4, 1944 of pneumonia. He's arguably one of the youngest soldiers of the Civil War and is remembered in his hometown of Port William by an Ohio historical marker. Private Alpheus McGriff was born on March 19, 1843. As a youth, McGriff's family moved from Montgomery County, Ohio to Springboro. By the age of 17, he was apprenticed to a blacksmith. McGriff enlisted on August 6, 1862, and remained with the Army until they were mustered out in 1865. He married Mary Kelsey on Christmas Day, 1867. Less than a year later, they had their first child, a son. By 1870, the McGriff family was living in Madison County, Indiana, where Alpheus was working in a factory. The story isn't one of bliss, though, because in less than 10 years, their son would die, and they would have to move back to Springboro. The bright spot, though, was the birth of a daughter. By 1900, Alpheus and Mary had bought a small farm outside of Springboro with their daughter and her husband. McGriff died on December 2, 1909. Private Benjamin Missildine was born on June 9, 1843, to Elizabeth Missildine. She was 43 when she gave birth to him. He grew up in Wayne Township near Waynesville, Ohio. His mother was a housekeeper for a wealthy family in the area. Missildine joined the Army on August 23, 1862, originally signing up for a 3-year enlistment period. This was short-lived, however, because he was released from the Army in Gallatin, Tennessee on December 31, 1862, due to an illness, most likely typhoid or cholera. In 1875, Missildine had moved to Sumner County, Kansas, and married his first wife, Amelia. Within a year, though, Amelia had died. Missildine married his second wife, Effie, in 1877. She, however, died in 1896. Missildine married for the third time in 1899. His new wife, Fanny, was just 26, whereas Benjamin was 55. Their youngest son and daughter continued to live with their father into their mid to late 20s. Missildine died on November 13, 1919, in the home that he owned.